Welcome to Back Your Blue on Extra 106.3. It's always a pleasure to hang out and talk with Daniel Matalon. He is the founder and CEO of A Second Chance Bail Bonds and A Second Chance Monitoring. A dude is all over the place. I don't know how he keeps up with the things he's got to keep up with. I'm always impressed by you, and thank you for giving us the platform to do this show, man. How are you?
Good. Doing well.
All right, man. I tell you, I know you're busy because I've seen the pictures. I've seen your Facebook posts.
Leaving after we.
I know exactly. It's every week. That's the thing that he says, and you'll learn this about him, Alli and Jennifer. That at the end of every show, he's like, "All right, I'm off to the airport," just like a racehorse off to the airport because he's taking his daughter to hopefully settle on a university.
No, she has.
She has. Or we know that.
Yeah. And we just lost this past Sunday. No, wait. No, a week ago Sunday.
Okay.
We got she got a call from SMU.
Woo, the Mustangs.
Got an offer from SMU, so she's committed to SMU.
Big time. SMU going to ride equestrian at SMU.
Yeah.
How excited is she?
Oh,
over the moon.
I mean, we couldn't be.
Yeah.
I mean, it almost is. It hasn't even set in.
No, I'm sure.
I mean, we're still celebrating.
Yeah,
so
that's
very,
great.
Very thankful and humbled by the opportunity at SMU. So
that is fantastic. Mustangs, I'm right about that, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's Mustangs. In Dallas.
Yeah, I try to
D.
keep up. a little bit with sports, and it balances with all the news that I have to keep up with. And
I'll be going to the Mustang tailgate.
Yeah, Mustang Nation.
Yeah,
all right.
I guess so.
I want to introduce you to Alli Neal. She is the founder of Revved Up Kids, and also Jennifer Ross, who is a retired police captain and board member at Revved Up Kids. Alli, we'll start with you. After 20 years of a just everyday suburban life, working in corporate human resources, staying at home with your two kids, world turned upside down by a clear call from, you would say, God.
I would say God. Yeah. Stay-at-home mom for 15 years, and my husband's company was sold. And when his company was sold, he lost his job of 26 years, and it was time to start praying about what the next chapter looked like. And apparently God decided the next chapter looked like Revved Up Kids. So It was very much out of the blue. It was very much an experience as if it was an Old Testament type dream where God just said, I need you to go and do this, and here's how you're going to do it, and here's exactly all of the details. And I didn't have any experience in this issue area. It came completely out of the blue, and it felt undeniable. Like I needed to do. There was no way that I could turn my back on it. And I'm a person who, my whole life, I had waited for like three knocks before I answered God. Like,
that's right.
Like the first time, I hear you, but I really think if you really want it, I need you to tell me 3 times.
You gotta be really clear.
Yeah, but this was beyond clear, and I just had to pursue it, and that was spring of 2009. That was 16 years ago, and it's been 16 years of this daily walk of faith. I've been astounded by it. I think a lot of people would not believe it. I mean, I wouldn't believe it, except I'm living it. But,
if it were a story you had heard, you'd be like, hang on.
No, there's no way. But yeah, it's been 15 years, 16,
That's incredible.
16 years. And
you and your husband, David,
yep.
Do you want to explain what Revved Up Kids is really quick?
So Revved Up Kids is dedicated to protecting children from sexual abuse. So it's a really dicey issue area.
Yes, ma'am.
Really difficult. A lot of people in this space are in it because of personal connection to the issue, and that was not why we got in it.
You've talked about the divine, which I believe 100%. As a faithful man, there's nothing you could have said there that would have thrown me off the scent. I don't believe, but. Talk about why this category. What was it that God pushed you into and said this is the place? Here's the third knock.
So after the revelation, which by the way, that's why I named it Revved Up Kids. After the revelation, it was a lot of deep dive research because I didn't know very much of anything other than the white dude in the van with the candy.
Yeah, that's right.
That was my knowledge of sexual abuse.
Yeah, that's right.
So I had to do a ton of research and self-education and obviously find out who's doing this. And in Atlanta, nobody was. And that was the fascinating thing, was there were people, organizations who were picking up the pieces for survivors. There were people who were doing some awareness raising, but nobody was training children about unsafe people.
Wow.
So I believe that's why God called us to do it, because it was an unmet need.
I volunteer with a lot of organizations through our church and have had to go through that training, do the background checks and all that. And it's funny you brought up the whole white van, ice cream truck, just the classic, if you will, if there is a classic, the stereotypical probably better.
Absolutely.
The stereotypical thing. And it's not. It can be basketball coaches. It can be someone at church. It could be someone in the neighborhood. It rarely, it's my understanding, it rarely looks like the white van.
93% of the time, abusers and victims know each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to introduce you to Jennifer Ross, retired police captain, board member of Revved Up Kids, City of Decatur from 96 to 22. Worked as a communication officer, patrol officer, field training, business district officer, investigator, sergeant over criminal investigation divisions, instructor trainer, crisis division for RAD, which is an acronym for rape, aggression, and defense, women's self-defense instructor. Is there anything you've not done? I mean, could you run the entire department? I guess you did run the entire department.
Well, my chief's saying was, as a captain, when he wasn't present and the deputy chief wasn't present, we were chief, so make good choices. So.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I like it. Captain over 911 Center, Criminal Investigation Division, Special Units Division. I could go on, but what connects you to this is the DeKalb County Sexual Assault Protocol and Child Abuse Protocol Committees. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the worst of the worst up close.
Yes. So my connection to what brought me into the fold of Revved Up Kids was the bulk of my career was spent in criminal investigations, which I later supervised as a sergeant and then as a captain. And while I was serving as the community information and education manager for our agency, community training classes and programs was what I was responsible for. And that's when our department brought RAD, which is a women's self-defense program, to the city of Decatur. And we got up and running and had a wait list of more than 200 ladies. And we would take teenagers in with their moms or a guardian. So 13 was the youngest at that time that we would allow. And for some of them, the curriculum was too much. And so the thing that I was repeatedly asked was, what program do you have for my children? Are there any programs like this that is applicable or child-friendly, boys and girls? And I started researching because that was the thing that I was being asked. And I started researching and was having a really hard time finding a program that wasn't stranger danger or just online or that fit with empowering, not scaring. And that's what we were looking for. And two of the ladies who had taken the RAD class with me contacted me later and said, hey, I found this organization at a child abuse prevention month event over at DeKalb County.
Or something.
It was workshops.
Okay.
And it was Revved Up Kids. So they passed me the name and I tracked Alli down and we scheduled a meeting, and then I believe we were the first police department partnership with Revved Up Kids. We partnered with Revved Up Kids to host the workshops at the Decatur Police Department. Our first workshops were in 2017, and we've been hosting them ever since. And then we also partnered for larger community events.
Before COVID.
Yeah.
And then also for parent and guardian training. Parents at this point were very lost about what their kids were able to access online. Some of them didn't realize that their kids could access and talk to adults on their game systems.
Oh, sure.
They're like, we don't have internet, but he has an Xbox. I'm like, well, and at that point we were working cases where I had one that was a 9-year-old boy with a game system in his bedroom, and he was on there at night with his adult friends. And when they started messaging, trying to get pictures and things like that, the parents didn't even understand how that was possible. So Revved Up Kids comes in and teaches the social savvy, I believe, was one, and it was this hole that parents didn't know what to do, but and it's a difficult conversation.
Of course it is, but it's necessary.
But necessary. And what I would always tell parents is how, when they were like, this is so uncomfortable and I don't want to scare my child, and we had the talk.
I had mine.
The talk.
I had the talk. I was reading a Christian book called Point Man, and it said you should have the talk with your kid between 7 and 9. We were on the way from ball practice, and he was 8, and so I was like, well, let's do it now. And you're shaking your head. What am I missing?
Can I just interject a stat
it should have been
for
earlier?
you? 8 is the average age of a victim of sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
The talk is forever, and the talk starts when they're learning words for body parts.
Wow. So it's so compelling.
That's why I didn't know
But
that.
that's exactly why, because, I mean, and at that age, they're more likely to be targeted.
But, and it's funny because I was thinking about the birds and the bees talk, not even the step further.
Okay.
The step further. That's, I don't even, to
But
be honest.
even that shouldn't be the talk, right? It just needs to be this organic thing that happens over the lifespan of their life.
And that was the point I was trying to get to, is parents wanted to have a one and done talk.
And
like they do about a lot of things.
Bundle it up into one package.
That's uncomfortable, and that doesn't work. And this is the best example I can give you is, how many times did you tell your child to cover their mouth when they cough or to wash their hands
Every
after
time.
they use the bathroom?
Every time. It never stopped.
Before it stuck.
Yeah.
Then you cannot have one uncomfortable conversation about what to do if you're made uncomfortable or your boundaries are crossed. You can't do that one time. And it's because it's uncomfortable for a parent, because you don't want to imagine that this is even a possibility.
That's right.
But every
So true.
teachable moment that you find needs to, and if it's woven in from the beginning, then you have children that are very confident to recognize and speak up when someone crosses a boundary.
Revved Up Kids is the organization that we're telling you about today, with founder Alli Neal and retired police captain and board member of Revved Up Kids, Jennifer Ross. When we continue, we'll get into the. I wrote down so many questions as y'all were talking. It just kept coming to me over and over and over again. So we'll get to some of those and hopefully leave you with some really, really good information about keeping your kids safe. Next, here on Back Your Blue on Extra 106.3. Welcome back to Back Your Blue on Extra 106.3. My name is Doug Cowart, along with Daniel Matalon of A Second Chance Bail Bonds and A Second Chance Monitoring, who is the reason we do this show to begin with. And our guest today, two very, very dialed-in ladies, Alli Neal, the founder of Revved Up Kids, and Jennifer Ross, retired police captain and a board member of Revved Up Kids. A couple things that stood out to me just in the opening segment that I wrote down and made notes on, and I would like to get to if you guys are okay with it. The fact that, I think, Jennifer, you said boys and girls, because that one is the one that stood out to me like a spotlight. Most people think it's only girls that are molested or sexually abused, and that's not the case.
Not at all.
I knew it. As soon as you said it, I was like, I know why she said that.
Well, and it, not just because I've worked cases with children, male children and teenage, boys, but also because part of my job as an investigator was to interview and interrogate suspects. And I cannot recall a sexual assault suspect, whether their victims were adults or teens or children, that I did not dig up prior victimization in their background.
Meaning they had done it before.
They were victims. They were victims as children.
Yeah, sure.
It's this...
the cycle.
It is a horrible cycle, and a lot of times boys definitely don't tell because of the stigma, and then when they do, And I've worked cases like this. The parents, specifically fathers, are so hung up on what their son's sexuality is now going to be, and they don't get them treatment. They don't get them. Children can recover, but sometimes, but especially with boys, the families really lock up with talking about
Admitting it.
and admitting it and getting kids help, and so therefore boys end up getting sort of ignored, and then you have a child that's been hypersexualized at a young age, and then they start acting out a lot of times on other children because that's what they have access to. And I've worked cases where I had a 9-year-old boy being assaulted by his 13-year-old cousin, and when we staffed the case at MDT, Metro Multidisciplinary Task Force meeting, we were like, we need to get this 13-year-old looked at. And so then DFACS can step in and order a psychosexual evaluation at the Matalon Center over at Emory. And then it comes out that child was assaulted by an adult female, and it just keeps going and going and going until something happens. And boys get forgotten, unfortunately.
So do you think it's acceptance, though? Like that's why they're not, like, maybe the family's choosing not to deal, you say it's a cycle and it keeps going and going, right? Like, so what is that?
It's certainly not acceptance.
I wouldn't say accepted.
It's
Denial, ignored. In that case I'm thinking of, I had a child being cared for.
Well, right, but I'm saying they're challenging they're not accepting, right?
No.
Right. So
Okay,
right,
they're
right.
not.
Sorry,
I thought
accepting that
you
it
meant
happens.
they
Yeah,
were
sorry.
accepting that this
Sorry.
is just
Yeah,
something that's always happening in our
path.
family.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to also add something to that, because we have to be careful of making an assumption that every victim of child sexual abuse is going to go on to become an abuser.
Sure.
That is absolutely not the case. It is a very narrow percentage of sexual abuse victims who are actually going on to perpetrate.
That's encouraging.
So, and that also adds to the stigma that we're trying to overcome.
Sure.
Because if I'm a victim of sexual abuse and I disclose that to you and you assume that means I'm raping children,
right.
Why would I ever tell anybody?
Why would I ever admit to that? Yeah.
So we
Or
have to
that happened to me.
walk a fine line of there are a massive number of victims, survivors, who have never gone on to abuse another child because they would never want to perpetrate that horror.
They know what it's like
on another. Yeah, exactly. So
and I'll tell you, the training that I went through with my church, to be able to help with a couple of the the outreach organizations through schools and all that, they never address that. And that's not and I'm not saying that to badmouth my church. They're doing probably the best they can with the information they have. They have instructors come in, but it's funny you say that because I don't think I've ever heard that until today. That is
I'm
something.
glad you and your listeners have now heard.
Yeah,
that.
well, right, it's important. But
Yeah.
but why is that not being told? Why is that story not being
Because
told?
we don't talk about this issue.
Yeah.
We do not talk about
uncomfortable.
sexual abuse.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
unsavory.
Yeah, sure. It is. It is a difficult conversation.
And how do we solve a problem if we can't talk about it?
Well, you don't.
Exactly.
You never do.
Exactly.
And
I
I'm
want
glad we're
Revved
here.
Up Kids to be out of business. That's what I want.
That's
Have
a great
you
goal.
have you ever done any work with the Anna Crawford Children's Center at all?
We have had conversations with them and not moved forward with training. That's a separate story. It has nothing to do with level of interest. It just has to do with bandwidth and scheduling and things like that. But yeah, there are
'Cause I've done some work with them in the past.
Yeah, there are other children's advocacy centers that we've worked with as well. So
Gotcha.
What is some of the types of training that y'all do? Is it multi-layered? Is there's things that should be obvious that probably is, but there's plenty of other things that are not quite as obvious?
I wouldn't say that. I think it's all pretty obvious. So we start as young as 6, and we have a program called Safety Sense for Children that is a personal safety and self-defense workshop. That's the one that we are delivering in partnership with several local police agencies. And then we have training, co-ed training for middle schoolers called Strong Teens. And then we have training for middle, high, and young women called Safe for Teen Girls and Safe on Campus. We have one for college-bound young women, Daniel.
Nice.
There we go.
That teaches them about all the dangers they
she's all
might
yours.
face on their college campus.
Yeah.
So, and then we train adults as well. So adults to help them become better protectors, to open their eyes to the conversation that we are having with you today, where you're like, wow, didn't ever think of that, didn't know that, right?
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things we want to inform the adults so they can be better protectors.
And I would even add to having gone through some training like that, as I said, being brave is not the right word, or shouldn't have to be the right word, but being brave enough to ask the questions. Because again, it goes back to that: if I ask too much, am I gonna look a certain way? Because people are fearful of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can see how people are
Yeah.
afraid to ask anything, especially in the world that we live in now, where everything is everything's going crazy, or it feels that way.
And it's also not, it's also being brave enough to be a soft landing place for the people in your personal circle who are survivors.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know it. But guess what? Statistically, we have twice as many survivors of sexual abuse in this state than we have cancer survivors.
Oh my. How about that number?
Think about how many people you know who have battled cancer and then double that number.
Goodness. Breast cancer, testicular cancer, childhood cancers. I mean, we have so many organizations that tackle cancer, and rightfully so. It needs to be done.
Yeah.
But when you put it in that perspective, and you talk about how many organizations even are trying to raise money for cancer, I mean,
Exactly.
it's astronomical.
Exactly.
And then you said the
Exactly.
number of people that have been abused sexually is double that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's wild.
Unreal.
It's insane.
But your friends aren't, your friends are, and again, go back to this, I might be dating myself, but go back to the 70s. Nobody talked about cancer. Nobody talked about cancer.
They
People got
whispered it.
cancer. You sort of whispered with your neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
People died from cancer. And then they started the breast cancer walks, and look what happened. And now when people get diagnosed with cancer, they tell people, and they tell people pretty freely, don't they?
Yeah, sure.
Because we made it comfortable. I don't know if we'll ever get there with sexual abuse. It's just another level of painful, right? To be able to have your friend knock on your door and say, hey, I just want to tell you this happened to me.
Yeah,
For me, because of what I do, people always tell me,
yeah.
because they know how I'll receive it.
Sure.
They'll know it's what I'm trying to prevent.
And you're not going to look at them as if
and
they're damaged goods.
And I'm astounded at how many people I know who have come forward and told me. In a million years, I never would have guessed.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a conversation that needs to be had, and that's why we're having it today. Revved Up Kids is the organization, and along with Daniel Matalon of Second Chance Bail Bonds, Alli, Neal, and Jennifer Ross. Jennifer, have you ran into that as well, just like Alli, where people are all of a sudden, maybe not all of a sudden, but they're comfortable with you knowing that this is something you've dealt with and understand?
Very much so. You see stats, you see numbers, and we're so numb.
We're numb to that.
We're
Yeah,
numb.
for sure.
We're numb to numbers. When I took the position of community information education manager, my job was to, at the department, anytime somebody called and said, can you come speak to our professional group? Can you come speak to our church group, our women's group, the school? That's what I started doing. And sometimes they would tailor it around just general safety, because I would always ask, what are you wanting me to cover? At the same time, I was teaching at Georgia Piedmont Technical College Law Enforcement Academy out in Covington. So I'm teaching mandate students. These are baby rookie police officers about to become police officers. They're trying to get through the academy. And it happened constantly. I would say 95% of the time that I taught at the academy or spoke or taught some sort of little class, just speaking at a community, to some type of community group or organization. And then when we were teaching the women's self-defense course, I would get either contacted afterward or asked to stay back and talk for a few minutes. I've had ladies break down in the class and voice it for the very first time. I've had police officers pull me to the side and say, this happened to me with my neighbor when I was a kid. I never told anybody. My mom doesn't even know.
Yeah.
Male and female.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it's funny. Not funny, it's the wrong word. It's jumped out to me because you said you talked to church groups and women's groups. I've yet to hear men's groups.
Men's groups typically didn't invite as much.
Sure, I understand.
And a lot of that has to do around, like, when we said we would come do safety talks. And I think that's just because women traverse the world in a different way.
Of course.
Typically, if a guy pulls up in a parking deck to park to come here, they don't have the same thoughts running through their head
you're right.
that women do. So there's not as much of a request. So I get
it.
Yeah.
I totally get what you're saying, but that's where we need men to be like, hey, we need to help. We need to be a part of the solution. They're 50% of the population. I'm 50% of the population. If it's a Bible study, if it's discipleships or whatever.
But you
fellas need to get involved.
You would
But
definitely
fellas-
you would definitely see dads want their sons in the workshops, though.
Yeah.
And that's telling.
That's it, right.
Because and that's different.
That's encouraging to me to hear that.
That's very encouraging, because I remember a time when, if you had asked a father, would you like for your 12-year-old boy to take this self-defense workshop, they'd be like, oh, no, I'll teach him. I taught him how to throw a punch,
That's right.
and that's not what this is about.
right.
But
Way off.
that is definitely different now, because we have generations of men who know.
Yeah, have experiences like you're saying.
Yep.
No, I love, but I made that note thinking about how boys were left out in the beginning, and now that's getting corrected, thank goodness. But men, you need to step up. You need to do better. You have to be a part of the solution, and whether it is your discipleship group, and I've been a member of discipleship group for 10 years, and it's never even come up. It's never even crossed our mind. And I've been through the training at our church, and it still hasn't come up. So
Because you don't want more of that. You go
What's that?
through the training at your church and you've checked the box.
Yeah, it's
and
easy.
you're not going to be like,
Right.
oh, I want more of that.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Right.
Let's bring somebody
That's
else
not
in.
the first thing on your list. Right.
More uncomfortable conversation. Let's go.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. But it needs to be done.
Yeah,
and
it
then change
does
the
need
fact
to
it
be
needs
done. And I'd like to interject another stat, because some of the numbers are compelling. Average age of first disclosure is 53 years old.
Wow. Is that male and
People
female?
hold this. I just know it to be average age of first
Okay,
disclosure.
got it. Yeah,
but
yeah.
people hold this, and they hold it for decades and decades. And think about the stress of that on your entire life, and the vortex of pain that you are radiating into every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening.
Yeah. This seems very
That's what we have created for survivors to have to deal with, because we've made this such a shameful issue and conversation.
clear. Yeah.
And it's tragic. It's
It is.
heartbreaking.
The training, where does it take place? Community centers, schools, churches, homes?
Yes.
Oh.
Police departments.
Yeah.
departments, yeah.
So our current police partners, I do want to give a shout out, because we're
Please
on
do.
Back Your Blue, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And I heard,
Yep.
obviously DeKalb, right? That was-
Decatur.
City of
Decatur. Decatur.
So our current police partners are DeKalb PAL, the DeKalb Police Athletic League, City of Decatur Police Department, City of Roswell Police Department, and Sandy Springs Police Department. And we're just about to add Gwinnett PD this fall. So
Nice.
really excited about that. Those partnerships have been really great. They've been very mutually beneficial. We are turnkey, so we go in, and it's very little bandwidth on the part of the police department. We create all the marketing. All they have to do is post it on their social. We run the registration. They give us a space, and they have an officer there to talk to the kiddos. And it's been really good, because it provides a service that people want from the police departments, without a lot of, the police have a lot to do, and the police are always understaffed. So for us to be able to provide that and reach all those kids in their community, it's been amazing. And that started with Decatur. Decatur became our model.
Which started with parents.
Right.
bringing Revved Up Kids to me.
Right, yeah, no.
But we also train schools, we train churches, we train private groups, scout troops, teams, clubs. You know, I've been in people's cul-de-sacs in their neighborhoods and done training. We'll go anywhere we can
You go
to
off-road.
reach a group of kids.
I love it.
Absolutely.
That's
we,
great.
We just want to reach as many kids as we can.
What about organizations that I didn't hear you mention? Fire departments. I mean, think about the interaction with community and fire departments, and I just think there's so many ways that that they have, and I want to be delicate in how I say this, because I love our police departments. They do wonderful work, and I think 99.9% of them are doing the exact right thing. But sometimes they're a little bit intimidating, and where the fire department wouldn't be. Am I off base there, you think?
So
We
what
tried.
I love...
We tried.
Well, now that's... We don't want to go there. What I love about the police relationship is now the police are in front of these kids.
That's actually
in
a
way
that's a double win.
that's friendly.
Yeah,
in
that's
a
right.
way that's
That's a good
relaxed.
way of looking at it.
Hey, kids, here's Officer Ross, and she can answer any question you have about the police.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating for those. They're just so eager
Little
to be able
sponges.
to ask all of their burning questions. And then we've got a group of teens, and we're like, here's an opportunity to ask any question in a safe space where you're not going to get in trouble for the question. Like, ask away, right?
Yeah.
So we're sort of bridging a gap.
I like it.
Where there's community policing is becoming more and more of a big, important part of policing, and this can be a piece of that.
Jennifer, did you see that in your career too, or is this something more now that's happening better?
It depends on the agency and the community.
Okay.
So I started with City of Decatur in 1996, fresh out of college, and one of the reasons that I chose, my father was an Atlanta police officer, so I grew up in police culture, and I didn't just put out applications and go to the first agency that took me because I was surrounded by police officers, and so I did research, and one of the reasons that I was drawn to City of Decatur and ended up working there was because they had early on, mid-90s, a focus on community policing, and so I consider myself to be lucky that I grew up as a baby rookie officer and into my career at an agency that allowed me opportunities for interaction with community members that wasn't responding to calls and making traffic stops. Because when that's all you do, and unfortunately there's just agencies where that's all they have time for because of staffing and just volume. But when you do not have those opportunities for the officers to go talk to kids, go talk to a church group, go teach a class, anything like that, and all they do is run calls and work shift and make traffic stops, you don't grow an emotionally well officer.
I can see that
way.
I can see
You
that.
have to pull them out of that and let them interact with the world.
Because otherwise it's just mechanical.
Well, it's completely skewed to everybody's doing something wrong, and this is all I do day in and day out, and we're human beings. And you see it. You see the wear and tear on them as human beings. And so, I was blessed to be in an
That's
agency that was very important. That was So when I went to the police chief and said, "Hey, I found this organization that Revved Up Kids that does safety and self-defense for kids, and this is what my parents are asking for," I didn't get pushback. I got, "Tell me what we need."
That's great.
And then from the city staff, the city manager, the commission, what do you need? That's what I got.
That's great. When we continue on Extra 106.3 with Alli, Neal, and Jennifer Ross of Revved Up Kids, and I ask about tips for parents, caretakers, preventing abuse, and then how do schools and groups get in touch with you. We've talked about doing it. Now, how do they actually make that a reality with y'all and getting that valuable training and information? Next on Back Your Blue on Extra 106.3. Welcome back to Back Your Blue on Extra 106.3 with Daniel Matalon of A Second Chance Bail Bonds and A Second Chance Monitoring. My name is Tug Cowart. This is Extra 106.3, and some would call it a difficult conversation today. I see it a little differently. I think it's fantastic that we have Alli, Neal, and Jennifer Ross of Revved Up Kids which is an organization that really dives in and teaches parents and children how to not become victims of sexual abuse, or and unfortunately, if it does happen, how to deal with it afterwards. I want to ask all about how schools and groups, community groups, get in touch with you to schedule training, or some of the other programs they offer, online training, or any and all.
So we have a contact form on our website. We have a contact page on our website. We've got a programs page on our website that lists all the different programs that we offer. And thank you for asking about other trainings, because I really truly believe the existential threat to childhood right now is their online life.
Oh my gosh.
And we're talking about 500,000 online predators that are just all day, every day trolling for our children.
I bet that number's low.
It is terrifying. That's U.S. Department of Justice. Just if
Yeah.
anybody's curious and wants to look it up.
No, but just think about how many people are in the world.
Yeah.
And now you're not. It's not
that's
just
in
your
the U.S.
neighborhood.
So 500,000
Okay. Got it.
U.S.-based predators.
Got
That's the Department of Justice stat. But so we address that in a two-pronged way. We have the social savvy training for parents that Jennifer mentioned earlier, and we also have a training program called Protected While Connected for 10 to 14-year-olds. And we're just in release. We've spent the last 2 years in development of a turnkey version of that training for middle schools. So we're really excited to be rolling this out for middle schools to be able to have access to this training, and welcoming of anybody that wants to have a conversation about bringing that to their students, because it's fabulous.
Goodness. And I had made myself a note earlier. AI fakes. The things that happen with that. And I know that's relatively new, in the last several years. People just now learning about it, hearing about it.
It's beyond the pale. And really, the online pornography is the devastation to this generation and the generation behind it of our children.
Unreal.
Because of access to online pornography. It's terrifying, and people have no idea what's happening.
2 clicks away. That's just my guess.
And
2 clicks away on any social media platform.
yeah.
It does not
And
matter.
and they're putting it. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, and then you click on it, and then I've had doctors, right, that their kids were on their computers, right, and then they go to arrest the doctor. The doctor had no idea.
Oh, wow.
Yikes.
I mean, I was involved in a case like this.
Oh, wow.
And it was it was chaos. Well,
I
then
can
they
imagine.
realized it was a kid. We ended up having to do juvenile bonds and so forth, which I'm sure.
yeah, and parents don't realize they think about
wild.
controlling the phone or controlling the computer.
No idea. Nobody
But-
had it. I mean, and it was just in the redirects and the things. And honestly, yeah, it's just wild how it can get out of control within a split second.
I've seen cases where parents and grandparents caregivers didn't realize that the children could even access the internet via a game system, or back when everybody had iPods, and the child was pulling up pornography on an iPod and reenacting what he was watching on the screen on a younger child in the household.
Yeah.
And the grandparents and parents had no idea that was even a thing, because they were connecting to free Wi-Fi.
Yeah. That's
And
unreal.
P.S., one more stat. Average age of first exposure to online pornography is 11. You're talking about 5th graders.
That's right. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Jen, I'll ask you about the training in Decatur that I know you have you see very favorably.
Very much so, and I've been to just about all of the workshops sit in on, because I go get everybody in the building, get them directed to where they need to be, answer questions for parents and the kids and teens. I think one of the things that has always struck me after so many workshops is I see the kids and teens come in kind of uncertain, kind of, their parents have told them, we're going to go learn how to defend ourselves. And it's a scary topic. Some of the parents are nervous and a little tense. And then I watch how the workshops are teaching basics about protecting your personal space, about using your voice, about trusting they call it the uh-oh feeling.
Trust your gut.
Trust your gut, which we try to not, because we don't want to be rude, and we teach children not to be rude to adults or bigger, older kids, and then that makes them
Reluctant.
Well, that exposes them in a way. And I watch how they walk in a little uncertain and then they leave so empowered to use their voice and they just seem bigger. They take up more space when they walk out of there. And I think parents are scared sometimes that if they come to a safety and self-defense workshop about protecting themselves from sexual abuse or trafficking, that they're going to be scared and terrified and crying by the time they leave. And it is exactly not that, because of the way that it is delivered. It is delivered in the way that it should be, where it is informational and it is empowering, and it's heavy, content,
just like today,
but delivered in a way that for kids, where if you are matter of fact and honest with kids, I think we don't do that enough.
You're right about that.
We don't do that enough, and I see the look on the parents' faces when Alli asks questions like, "What have you heard?" Other kids in school say, and the kids will call something out, and the parents are horrified,
because they heard
right,
it.
Exactly. So just
you can't be naive.
I have been in the exam room at a children's hospital more times than I can count, with a family, with children, at the worst moment. There is nothing you can do but recover from that point. What we need to be doing is preventing. And if you empower a kid to speak up and speak out, that makes them not good victims.
Right. And especially in Atlanta, Georgia, with an interstate system like we have and the world's busiest airport. I don't know that we're the number one, but I bet Atlanta is.
We are a hub.
No question
and just
about
because
it.
of geography,
That's exactly
we are a
right.
hub.
Oh, yeah. It's unbelievable.
Yep.
How do folks find you on social media, websites, and that
At
sort of
Revved Up Kids, 2 V's in Revved, REVVED Up Kids, at Revved Up Kids on all the socials, not TikTok.
No TikTok.
Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X, Twitter.
Okay. All right. Good enough. Website?
Website, revvedupkids.org.
.org. We'll make sure we got the right in there. Anything that we didn't hit that we need to in the last minute here?
If there's anybody listening to this show who would be interested in sponsoring one of our police trainings, we would welcome that conversation, because we like to fund those so that they're free to the community.
Sure.
What does that look like for them? What does
It costs us to go in for a day with 3 trainers. It costs us $1,150, and we would brand that person all over it, all over the socials, and
Sure.
that's what we do with
event.
And we write grants. We get some grants. We just got a grant to cover all the Sandy Springs ones in the next school year, so we're thrilled about that.
That's great news.
But we don't have funding right now for Decatur or Roswell, and we are looking for funding. So.
And we'd encourage the other metro police departments to get involved as well. That would be something
Absolutely.
nice. Yeah.
Yes. Any police departments listening
and
that
sheriff's
would
department?
like
Do you
to
work with
learn
any,
about
do you work
partnering
with any
us.
sheriff's departments at all? No.
Sheriff's departments, sure.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
those are all natural partners for
Right.
us.
Easy. Right.
Yeah.
It's a heavy conversation, but a necessary conversation, and a really important one. So please, if you missed any of it, go back and listen to it in podcast form. Revved Up Kids, Alli, Neal, and Jennifer Ross, thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you for being here.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
having us.
for having
Thank you
us.
both.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
both.
Daniel.
for hosting this.
Oh,
Yeah.
This is the least I could do. So thank you guys.
This is Back Your Blue with Daniel Matalon of A Second Chance Bail Bonds and A Second Chance Monitoring on Extra 1063.